Right, well, let's get going on drafting this so you can watch me do it. And if you have any questions, just stop me, right? But we will get moving on this pretty quick. All right, so I'm just going to start by, and I've said this, but I think the drawings are a little bit out of order with this project, right? It's not very common to do A101 on as sections, so it's kind of weird. So the drawing is set, I feel like, is a little bit out of sequence, but we'll deal with that. But I think I'm just going to start with this lower level, right? Lower level plan here. And we will work through drawing this, most of it. We'll have today, Monday for sure. So I think within 2 days, 2 sessions, I'll be able to get through probably the entire outer boundary, the inner walls, the little vestibule, the storefront. So kind of blocking out the major building elements. So we'll talk about that. I'm just going to start a brand new file here. I'm going to click on new, and it's going to say, hey, what template would you like to start with? And I'm going to go down to architectural. Okay. And I'll create new wall types as I need, and you'll see, the whole skill set happening as we kind of work through it. Okay. Let's hopefully get my little workspace going here. And I'll probably move pretty quick, which I'm not too worried about because I record these, so you can go back and slow it down if you need to. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do, of course, is save my file. And I want to do that so that I don't forget and, somebody hits the plug on my desktop with a vacuum and it unplugs and kills my file and I don't save my work. So first thing, save as, project, and desktop. I'll create a new folder here and we will call this Here we go. Oh, shoot. I did something very bad. Hold on. Let me start over. Or I didn't check something that could be very bad, so I have to go. Let me go back and delete that. Hold on. Okay. All right. So file, save as, project. And the bad thing that I did was I didn't check to make sure how many backup files I had generating, something you may have forgotten about, right? We've only talked about it maybe once or twice, but if you skip this step from like all of my workings, my, delvings into Revit, I don't think you can go back and change the number of backups that you generate through the whole project. So if you just generate one and you want 3, right, to be safe, you can't go back and change it. I'm pretty sure you used to be able to. And that's why I've been researching it for somebody else, but I don't believe you can go back after the fact and change it. So I'm going to click on options here, and I do have it set to 3, but I think that the out of the box default now is 1, which is very different. It used to be 10. So you can always, I guess, save as maybe and create a new set of backups. But we like to just make it right in the first place. So 3 backups, hit OK, and I'm going to call this, it's a Revit file, looks good. I'm going to hit save. All right, so I'll create levels as I need them. I'll create wall types as I need them, all that good stuff. But immediately, I'll just go through my workflow as I work through a professional project, right? All of the things that I do first. So number 1, I save, right? The second thing I always like to do is I like to get a little bit of the housekeeping out of the way. So I will create levels and I will create a couple of wall types, right? And I've said before, I like to do groups of tasks that are similar at the same time, right? Because you kind of get into that workflow. Creating wall types, well, I'll create 2 or 3 and get them out of the way. I don't create one and then add a level and then create a second one, and then go and draw a little and then create a third. If I need to do that, I can, but I like to get some of these similar activities out of the way at the same time, okay? So the first thing I need to do is look at my wireless switch here, and I need to see how many levels it has. So of course we have this full drawing set here, so I'll remind you that this drawing set should, if you're going to build from it, right, it should have enough information that you could recreate it in drawing format, right? So I'm going to go down to a sectional view of this, and I am going to, oh, yeah, here we go. Here's some sections. And I'm going to look at, see if I can find some heights of things here, right? And I actually like this project in that it doesn't give us very many good heights, and so we have to figure it out a little bit, right? And I like to show that to people because I think sometimes you need permission to do that kind of stuff when you're first starting drafting. You're like, well, wait, how do I figure out that height? Well, you can count block, or you can use a scale and measure it, right? And I don't think when you're new at this you feel comfortable doing that, but it's well within the rules, right? So I know that we have kind of a main level here, and I know that this, you know, if you haven't seen a section before, right, a section is a vertical cut of a building, right? So a floor plan is a horizontal cut of a building. A floor plan is cut 3 to 4 feet above the floor you're looking at, down onto. And a section cut, I think everybody hopefully has a general sense of what a section is at this point. A section cut is if you took the building, you see these section markers that run all the way, across the building here. If you took a knife and just sliced that building in half vertically, whatever you saw there would be the section cut, okay? So the section cut is the perfect place for us to look and see some heights. And actually, I went to here's our overall building sections, and they don't have any data markers showing that. So that's not a whole lot of help. And so I'm going to cruise down here to these sections, right? We have a couple of wall sections or partial sections. And I'm going to look at these and see if I can find some heights of levels. And I don't see any traditional like datum type markers, right? Meaning I don't see this kind of thing happening on this project. But what I do see is a dimension, 15'4" to the upper level finished floor. Okay, well, I'll take that. If I hadn't seen that dimension to help me place that next floor, I likely would have counted block, right? If you look at the wall types, or if you just general know, or if you look it up, CMU block is 7 and 5/8 inch tall with a 3/8 inch joint. They're 8 inches tall. That's something you can kind of look up. So I could say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, I could count them all the way up to level 2 and get a good sense of where level 2 is. But I don't need to. I see 15'4" for the upper level, and then 31'4" to the top of masonry, which goes all the way to there for the top of that wall. Okay. Now the roof is 1, 2 blocks down, so we may have to, you know, 8 inches, 16 inches. You know, our roof is going to be 16 inches below that, but we'll come back to that as we create levels. All right. So our level 1 will be at 0. Our level 2 will be at 15'4" above the main level. And I know it says to finished floor, which those of you who have experience in industry, right, to finished floor is a little tricky because what if the finish changes? Should be maybe to structural, top of structural slab, right? But we'll leave that alone for now. Not too critical. So level 2. I'm going to click on level 2 here. 15'4", 15'4", enter. Okay. Now I'm changing my level heights within an elevation view because I don't see things that have sectional value or heights in my floor plan view. So I have to go back over here to my elevation view to change those heights. So level 1, level 2, and we will do let's do what they're calling it. We can just mimic things. You're like top of masonry, whether you know what that means or not, that's what they're calling that dimension, right? So you could mimic that in your drawings and be just fine knowing what that means. You could call it top of wall, level 3, right? Whatever. We'll just mimic their language and say top of masonry. So level here. Is your computer working okay over there?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Good. All right. So I'm going to create one more level here. And are the screens turning off or something? Okay. I'm going to create another level, and just like a lot of other things in Revit, I generate it and it may not be exactly correct, right? But I know that I can revise it and make it correct. So level 3, which is top of masonry, is 31 foot 4. Oh, look at that. That was a good guess, wasn't it? Maybe. So we will call this one, just to not confuse ourselves, top of masonry. Yes. So now I have level 1, level 2, and I have top of masonry. I'm going to add another level, and that's going to be my roof plan, because I want to eventually add a roof here, so I'll need my roof plan level. And that is going to be, here we go. That is going to be, let's just say it's maybe to the top of that truss there, right? Or to the top of the deck. 2 blocks down, and those blocks are 8 inches tall. So we're going to say it's 16 inches below this one. Well, I can do math in my head and figure that out. Or I can DI dimension, click, click, click. Click on my level, 0, 16 inches, and there we go, right? All right. Right now, this kind of reminds me that, hey, I don't like my text overlapping. That sort of in my head says, wait a minute, is the scale of this drawing right? Because, you know, if things are 1/8 inch, they're usually overlapping in the text when they're that close. Let's see what the scale of this drawing is. This is 1/2 inch. Okay. What is the scale of our little building sections back here? I have to flip back through my drawing set. Oops, these full building sections are, oh, they are at an 1/8 inch. So if you want to mimic this drawing set and you want to get, oh, these are elevations and building sections on one sheet, and you want all of them on there, you could create them at the same scale. Totally valid way of doing it. First of all, you don't have to do as many building sections as this, right? It's not required. So there's going to be space on your sheets to make these a little bit bigger. So I think I'm going to change this to a 1/4 inch scale. And I like that because my annotation isn't as large and it's easier to manage. Okay. You're going to see me flipping through this set quite a bit because I know some things about the set, but I don't know everything and I forget from semester to semester. We've done this project a few times. Okay. I'm going to give you a little hint or a little foresight into this project, and you probably wouldn't have run into it for a little while, but you would have run into it. These are not the only levels that you'll need. They're the best basic levels that you'll want, but there's another set of levels that you'll need, and those are going to be for the vestibule. This is a little vestibule on the front of the project, right? So this little section is this little building vestibule here, and it's shorter than the rest of the project, right? So I'm going to create some levels so that when I draw these walls right here, I can assign them to a level. So let's see. Where is our little vestibule section? There it is, right there. Okay, so here's a section of our vestibule. There's no dimensions on it. I see block and I see a door. I could probably go to the door schedule and find out how tall this door is, right? And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, and I could figure out how tall this is. But I have another section here that very clearly shows me the block, and I can just count that block and figure out how tall that is, okay? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We'll say we have 16, 17, 18 blocks to the top of the wall. You got 288 inches? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do it in inches, 288.
24 feet.
24 feet. I was like, did you do that in your head?
No,
I saw you typing.
I'm not that smart.
Okay. You said 24 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. 15. Okay. 24 feet. Okay. That seems kind of tall.
No, that's not 24 feet.
It's not? It's so 16 times 18, right?
8.
Oh, at least it's 18.
8. Yeah, 16 times 8.
No, I bet.
80,
14 feet?
100 and
It's 10.6 feet.
10.6. Okay.
So 128 inches.
Okay, that seems right. Like, that's kind of a tall vestibule. It didn't look that tall. Okay, so we're going to call this vestibule height. Let's call it vestibule. Okay, and then vestibule roof is going to be 2 blocks below that, so 16 inches below that. So we'll create another level. And that will be dimension DI, right? And 16 inches below that. And we will call this vestibule roof. There we go. So I have all of my levels set up. Everything with regards to that. I don't think we have any other levels we have to create that I can remember right now. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan. Yep.
I did have a question.
Okay.
So on the other project, I was struggling because the levels will keep moving.
Uh-huh.
How can I not have that?
So in some of the views they were longer and would extend way past, and some of the views they were shorter, and there's not a great way to manage that, honestly. I would say usually when you move them in to your view, they don't move a whole lot, but there might be some flexing in and out. Yeah. Yep. One of the pains of Revit. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some wall types. And I think I'm really just going to create 2 wall types for this project. I'm going to create an exterior wall type, and I'm going to create an interior wall type for now. And I think that's good enough. And let me just say this, I'm going to guess on a few things here too, right? I'll let you guys really dig through the set, but I'm going to say this wall type H is just CMU block with a stud on the inside. And I'm going to say this interior wall is just 3 5/8 inch metal stud with gypsum board on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to make 2 simple wall types. If you have to change them for your project, you can. I'm going to go to level 1 here, and I'm going to click on wall. And I'm going to create 2 wall types. And the first one has block in it. Block on metal stud. Well, that sounds very familiar, right? So I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to hit edit type. I'm going to duplicate it, right? I'm creating a new wall type. I'm going to call this wall type, or maybe we'll call it exterior wall type 1. CMU block, CMU with metal stud. Okay, I'm going to hit edit. There's my CMU block. I think we could probably leave most of these. So we'll leave this. We'll say this wall assembly is pretty good. The metal stud, let's say the metal stud is 3 5/8. And there's gypsum board on the inside. So really I only changed the metal stud. So if you see this and you think, oh yeah, there's probably plywood. Yeah, there's probably air infiltration barrier. Yeah, there's probably an air gap that is probably maybe only about 1 inch. That looks pretty good. I'm not going to get really on you about your wall assemblies being perfect, right? That's not the intent of this course, is for you to know exactly how things are put together, right? I want you to be able to change these, right? So they're somewhat similar to what we're looking for, but I get this is kind of the hardest part with new designers. They're like, yeah, great. I know I need a CMU block wall. I don't know how thick that is. I don't know all that stuff yet, right? So get it as close as you can so that it appears as if it matches the set of drawings, right? I'm gonna hit OK, OK again, and I have my 1 wall type created. I'm going to create a second wall type. I'm going to click on wall here and drop down. My interior wall, I want it to be, let's see, an interior partition. And so I'm going to grab the 6 in it, or no, I'm going to grab a narrower one because I wanted to do a 3 and 5/8 inch metal stud. Edit type, duplicate, interior wall type 2, 3 and 5/8 metal stud with gypsum. Edit type, gypsum board, 3 and 5/8 inch metal stud, and 5/8 gyp. Okay, great. That one is perfect. I just renamed it. I'm going to hit OK, OK again, and I essentially have my 2 wall types. Okay. All right. So it's time now for me to start drawing my building here. Okay. So the first thing I need to do is I need to set up my grid. So I've generated my levels, I've saved my file, I've created a couple of wall types. I need to lay out these grids to make it easier for me to draw the building using the structural grid, right? I'm going to draw some walls and then we'll talk about storefront, and I think that'll get us through tonight. So I'm going to zoom in here and start creating my grid. Grids are generated in floor plan levels, right? They're best, I think you might be able to generate them in like an elevation view, but they're best drawn in a floor plan view. And I say that because they're represented mostly in floor plan views instead of drawings, right? So we have A, B, C, D, E. So I'm going to come over here. It's my level 1 floor plan, and I'm going to go to architecture, all the way down here to grid. Looks like the shortcut is GR, and I'm just going to kind of start creating these. This is A. And if you don't like the bubble at the end there, you can uncheck it, recheck it up there. Great. Grid. Now I know the next grid line is 10 feet off of that, B, so I'm going to choose my little pick line here. Pick will allow me to specify an offset. 10 foot, enter. Revit is smart. Hopefully, yes, okay, B. And I'm going to continue on with my offsetting. C is 10 foot. 10 foot. There we go. And then we have D, C, oh, A to B is 10 foot, B to C is 10 foot, C to D is 10 foot. So we have another one here. These look wonderful. And D to E is 30 feet. So D to E, click on my picker again, 30 feet, enter. There we go. Okay, so I have my vertical grid happening, and now it's time for me to do my horizontal grid. It's time for me to do my vertical grid. And we start with number 1. So grid, or GR. And I'm going to draw the first one. And it thinks it needs to be F, but we're going to tell it no, it indeed needs to be 1. And then grid 1 to 2 is very narrow, it's 4 inches. Okay. So grid, picker, 0, space 4, enter. Okay. Let me just, I'm going to hit undo real quick. My 2 grids were kind of overlapping, so I picked on my grid and I elbowed it right there. And it bumped down. Drag it down. So we have grid 1 and 2, and then we have grid 3, which is 16 foot 4 off of that. It's a nice, good masonry number, right? Okay, click on my picker. 16 foot 4, enter. There we go. Grid 3. 3 to 4 is 16 foot 8. So 16 foot 8. Grid 4. From 4 to 5, it's 16.8. 16.8. Okay. And then from 5 to 6, it's 8 foot. 8, enter. Click. And we'll pull those out just a tiny bit, and that looks pretty good. Now, my grid is set. At this point, my next step, I like to dimension my grid, just so that I pick up on any mistakes that I made in its creation, right? So I can dimension DI, or I can go to annotate, and I choose my aligned dimension. You could also choose linear. Click, click, and I just start creating my dimensions.
Hey, Shelley?
Yep.
Sorry,
You're good.
how did you move the, like when your 1 and 2 were overlapping, how did you put that?
The little elbow?
Yeah, that
Yep.
elbow.
Let me show you. I'll do it on this side. So 1, click, 2, click, and they're overlapping. I grabbed the number 2, and when I did that, I get that little mark right there. This is add elbow, and you can drag it up and down.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, now I'm going to dimension my vertical grid here, again, just to pick up on any mistakes that I may have made, right? DI, click, 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 and I just start click, click, and then to end my string of dimensions, I click in space, click, and I have my dimension. So it looks, I like to compare, those look pretty good. 10, 10, 10, 30. 10, 10, 10, 30 looks pretty good. Save. All right, now it's time for me to draw some walls. Okay, and you know, again, drawing in Revit or any really drafting program is not just about the drawing lines or modeling components, but you have to think through what you're actually drawing, right? So I'm gonna look at this and I'm gonna think about maybe the how this building is being put together and the best way of going about drawing it, right? And the best way I think of going about drawing it is really looking at how my section is drawn. So I have 2 levels and a roof, and really my wall goes from the main level all the way up to the very top there, okay? And then we have this floor that comes in at the second level, and it, you look at it and it kind of splits that interior wall and it bears right there. They have a lintel, right? Kind of bears right there, and the slab comes in here, okay? And then we have a truss that sits again on top of that bearing point right there. But the outer wall assembly is all block, right? It looks very continuous. There are no breaks in it. And the structure just kind of comes in and sits on that interior stud, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I can really just draw my exterior walls from main level all the way to that top of masonry, and they would be just fine. And I would say that 99% of the time with even a big building, right, that's a good way of going about drawing walls, right? Unless there's a very specific case, when you're getting into a model, you don't want to be drawing from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Draw continuous lengths of wall, right, that go from the main level all the way to where they terminate, okay? Okay. So I'm going to start drawing my walls. Let me go back to, here we are, lower level floor plan. It's a little confusing too. I like main level. Very critical of their drawings, right? Lower level makes me think of basements. Okay. So time to draw this. So I think I'm just going to kind of look at it and say, well, I've got my exterior wall and it looks like it goes from grid line A, and we're not going to worry about this opening. We're going to fill that in. We're also, like I said before, we're not going to worry about this piece. This is existing. We're just not even going to include that in anything. So that goes from grid line A all the way to E, and then we turn and we go from grid line E and 1, right, that corner, all the way straight down to 5. And then at 5, we go all the way over straight to, ooh, there's not a grid line there. I should have maybe had a grid line there. Let's look at maybe some of our dimensions. Do we have any dimensions right there? Oh, there we go, right there. Yep. You're right. We have 22 feet off grid line. So this little wall is 22 feet off grid line. We know that these walls, and even this one, right, this wall right here, This is going to have to go all the way across, be full height. Even though we have this little vestibule interrupting it, right? Because even though it shows an opening right here, that opening is only for the vestibule. Yep.
So would this be, just out of curiosity, would this be like a good opportunity to like map out where the vestibule would be to use like a reference plane?
Yeah.
Like line it right there so you know where it is?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. That's a really good place to, and we'll do that. We'll put a reference plane there. So our wall is going to like go all the way across. Okay. The opening is only on the interior for that vestibule. All right. Which means when I draw this wall all the way across, there's going to be a solid wall there until I do something later, which I'll show you. Then the little vestibule is going to grow out here, right? And then our wall is going to just finish up and go to grid line A and 5. So let's just start right here. And I'm actually going to turn my grid bubbles on both sides so that maybe I can navigate a little better, right? We'll see how that happens. There we go. Okay. I'm going to start my wall command. And so I'm going to go to architecture, wall, and I'm going to define my wall to go from level 1 all the way up to top of masonry. And I'm going to draw it, not at its center line, because I don't want it to center line on my grids, right? My grids here are very clearly showing me that if I change my location line to finish face exterior, I'll be able to draw very neatly all the way around. So we're going to start here at A and 1, click. My wall is very nicely drawing on the edge of that, so I just pan over. It goes all the way over to E. I zoom in, I click on that endpoint, click. I start moving in the downward direction. Okay. And I go all the way down here. Goes down to 5 actually. Click. And now I have to go over to somewhere, right? We'll pretend we didn't measure it. Well, we do know it's 22 feet. I could type 22 feet. Here's my problem. Well, it's not really a problem here, actually, it looks like. So that blue temporary dimension, it says 18'6", right? That dimension, you see how on the right-hand side, it is actually going to the outside edge of that wall, right? So in this case, I could type 22 foot, enter, and it would create, DI dimension, it would create a 22 foot length of wall. That's not always the safest way of going about it though, because sometimes that temporary dimension goes center line on a wall, right? And if that is the case, our 22 foot dimension is not actually 22 feet off the grid. So I usually will stop at that point and I will draw a reference plane just to verify everything. Okay, RP reference plane, RP, I draw it somewhere out here. Dimension, DI, escape, escape, I click on my reference plane, 22 foot, enter, and then I will use a line, AL, click, click, to make sure that wall is the right length. All right, my vestibule then comes down to, it comes down here. Oh, you know what, I didn't even really need to do that though, because this wall has to continue all the way over, right? It's good. I placed a reference plane where the vestibule will be when I draw it, shorter. But that wall is actually going to, I'm going to click on it, or I'm going to align AL, and I'm going to bring it out all the way to grid line A. There we go. I do know my vestibule has to live there, but it's shorter, so we'll define that in a minute. And then I just have a wall to finish off here, WA wall. Right, a shortcut, you'll notice this now when I start really drawing, I shortcut everything, right? WA, AL, GR, you know, RP, because I don't like, I'm very lazy. I don't like taking my mouse all the way up here, clicking on a tab to then click on a button to then come and execute a command, right? I like to be able to type them in very quickly and get the command working. Oh, it's on the other side of the grid line. Spacebar, flips it. I come down and join them. I always like to pop into 3D to see my lovely work. It's just a box right now, but it works, right? Oh, you know what? One thing I do need to check, right? Did I actually grab the right wall type? No, I didn't, did I? That could have been a huge mistake. I was thinking, hey, my visual graphics is in coarse view, and that looks pretty narrow because I'm looking at it without wall striations. But I did a very bad thing. Again, I didn't draw with the right wall type. I'm going to hover over my wall, tab, click, and I just want to remind you, you can change things after the fact, right? So I can come up here, and these are finished face exterior drawn, which means that whatever I draw or I replace this with, it will take it and it will stay at that finished face exterior and grow to the inside, which means my dimensions will be maintained on the exterior, which is what I want. So interior, we wanted wall type, CMU with metal stud. There we go, look at that. Fountained right up. I'm going to change my coarseness level here to medium right now, just because I want to make sure I'm seeing my actual wall type striations. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to come back and draw my vestibule. Okay, so the vestibule is going to, I'm just going to right now, draw it from where the exterior wall is, outward, go over and in. Okay. So that goes from D over 8 feet, which will leave 22 foot. Okay. I think I've talked about create similar before, pretty sure, right? So instead of having to go all the way up, click on wall, type WA, use a drop down, find the right wall type. I know I'm going to use this wall for my vestibule. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to choose create similar. This is create similar, CS. And that way it just initiates my command with the right wall type. So I then come over here and I change my definition of height from where it was at to go from level 1 up to vestibule. Finish face exterior. Oh, it's on the wrong side, right? Spacebar. Click, 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 and there's my little vestibule. Of course, I like to pop into 3D. Look how lovely it's looking already, right? Now, I've shown you how to create wall openings, right? And you're thinking, well, maybe I create that door space right there with a wall opening, which is not the case. We're going to add some storefront there, which will create an opening for your door, so we don't have to do that. So this little opening for your door, that will be created with a piece of storefront. Okay, this door right here, this opening into the building, will also be created with a piece of storefront, which we're going to talk about. Before I do that, though, I just want to take about just a few minutes and I want to create a few interior walls because there's not a whole lot. I'm going to draw, well, maybe I will do the storefront first. Let me do the storefront first because there are you have to kind of figure out the dimensions on kind of this area, right? So let me go through storefront first. Okay. Oh. Any questions so far? All right. Before I start creating storefront, though, I want to go through force of habit again. Somebody's going to always ask me to print. I want to set up, look at my views, kind of get them oriented the way they need to be, right? I could create some sheets if I wanted to. I might create 1 or 2 tonight. But I just want to look at my views and see how things are looking, right? And I think the first thing I'm going to do is, this is at an 1/8 inch. And that means I can fit 1, 2 drawings on a page. But I don't have this long existing building here. So I actually think I'm going to change these to 1/4 inch. If you wanted to match this for the final, that'd be fine with me. If you want to make them 1/4 inch, that would be fine with me as well, right? I'm not necessarily going to be nitpicky about scale. What I will be nitpicky about is if your drawings fit on the page nicely and they're lined up, right? And they look nice on the page. I'll look at that more so than if the scale identically matches the set, right? Which it could and still look nice. But I'm going to change this to 1/4 inch. I think that scale is a little bit more appropriate. This isn't a huge building. And I'm going to click on sheets, right click, new sheet. I'm going to load in a 24 by 36. Or 22 by 34. Okay. And there's my first drawing sheet. And I'm going to call it AE 101. And this will be called, they're calling it lower level, right? Lower. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my level 1. We're going to go through our checklist, right? 1/4 inch, detail level, how am I viewing it, visual style, jump over here. Is it cropped? How does the crop region look, right, before I put it on a sheet? I'm going to drag it in a little. You can move these little elevation markers by selecting them and just nudging them with your arrows. That's what I'm doing now. Select, nudge, nudge with my arrow keys. Select, nudge those in. Because if I bring my crop region in, it will crop those out. Nudge, nudge, nudge with my arrow keys. Bring my crop region in just so it looks nice, right? And the question about your levels moving in and out, right? This might help mitigate that, right? Your levels extending very far or being very short on your drawings. If you set your crop region and then you don't move it, and then you adjust your levels on your elevations appropriately, I think it's less likely that they will move again because you've already changed a crop region, which sometimes will bump them in and out. So if you adjust these kind of visual settings first and then go change your annotation, right, you're kind of helping it not move again, I guess. If that makes sense. So there's my first floor plan. We don't have level 2 drawn yet, but I can go there and see that there's stuff there, right, because we've drawn all the way up to level 2. I'm going to go through my checklist here again. Make sure it crops, turn on my crop region. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go to my roof plan. I don't have a roof plan yet, but I can see the building because it goes all the way up to that level. I forgot to change my scale on this one. Nobody said anything. Okay, still looks good. And then I'm going to go to, I'm not going to go to my ceiling plans just yet, but I'm going to go to my elevations. So north, okay, turn on my crop region, change my scale, right, and I'm going to drag this in, drag that in, looks pretty good. Turn off my crop region, and then my east elevation. Do all these things again. And again, doing this first kind of just helps things run a little smoother. Crop it, turn my crop region on, drag it in. Looks wonderful, nice, neat drawings. Ooh, I wish those were in just a tiny bit more, right? So I drag it in just a little bit more. It's pretty good. South, you know, and again, you'll see me, I say this a lot, but I'm doing the same task over and over again, and it helps me get it done quicker, but then I don't forget things either. I don't forget to do the scale. I don't forget to run through my checklist here, crop, turn the region on, right? Because I'm doing them all at the same time, I just sort of, you know, work through the same exact things, and it makes my views, I think, somewhat more consistent. Here we go. And then west. Okay, 1/8 inch, we'll change it to 1/4. Medium. Crop it, turn the region on, bring it in. Okay. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to actually create a new sheet, another new sheet. We'll make that the elevation sheet just to see how everything is fitting. So we'll call this exterior elevations. Lower level floor plan. I'll grab my level and drag it down. Oh my gosh, that is kind of big at 1/4 inch, isn't it? Well, that just told me something, didn't it? These sheets must be bigger. What size sheets are these? No, it's a 24 by 36. Huh. All right, so that didn't really work for me. I should have just left it at 1/8 inch. Okay, well, I'm glad I realized that now, right? So I'll go back to level 1, and we'll just change it to, from 1/4, we'll change it to 1/8. Fine, right? And level 2, from 1/4, you know, I'm doing a little bit of the same work over and over again, but that's okay. Roof plan, it's easy enough, 1/8 inch. And likely that will mean, let me show you another little trick. So I went and I did those all individually, but I can come over here in my project browser, click on the first one, click on Shift, last one, I pick them all, right? I'm going to change my view scale right here in properties instead of in the view to 1/8 of an inch. And it just changed all those elevations at the same time, a little shortcut. North. Now, some of my annotation is overlapping, so I have to elbow a few of them. It's okay. I may come back to doing that at the very end, right? But north, east, I've drawn these in just a tiny bit too far at this point now because, there we go. South, west, bring this out just a teensy bit. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go back to my lower level plan. And I'm actually going to change my level 1. This level 1 is called level 1. I'm going to rename it so that it's the same as this. I like things to be called the same so that I don't mistake them for something that they're not, right? Lower level plan, right click, rename, upper level plan. I'm going to go to my sheet 101, drag my plans over there. So lower level plan. There we go. About the same size. I don't know. What are their scale here? That's 1/8 inch. I feel like ours, well, maybe that's right. Doesn't feel right though. I wonder if these were done in AutoCAD and the scale is wrong. Anyway, so there's our lower level plan, right? And I can go to my elevations now. North, drag it over, click, and east, whoops. Click and drag it over. These do appear as if I could put 4 on the same sheet. I'm gonna risk it, right? Crazy, crazy. So north, I'll move it over a little. I'll put east right next to it. Yeah, they're all going to fit on the same page. So south gets pulled on over, right? And then west gets pulled on over. Oops, little click happy there. There we go. And if they aren't quite lining up or looking the way they should, I click on it and I just move it over a little bit, right? Click. I like my datums to line up as best they can. I click on the view to get my little grips for my view titles. I can drag that out just a little bit till it hits the one above it. Come on. There we go. Okay. Click, click, or nudge, nudge. Looks pretty good. All right, so I have a good sense of what scale my drawings need to be now, right? So in the future, when I'm all done with everything and I'm panicking because it's due, I'm not worried about, oh my gosh, they're the wrong scale. I have to rescale all of them. I have to re-put them on all the sheets, right? I've taken a little time and just figured out now what size they need to be to fit on the sheets nicely. And I don't think likely these will change, right? Professionally, you may have to shuffle a few things. They may change a tiny bit, but ours are going to stay pretty well the same. Okay. So here's our lower level plan. I want to talk about storefront a little bit now and how we're going to create storefront. Okay. And I think I'll introduce it, and then next time we meet, I'll talk about storefront. We'll get the interior walls drawn, get the roof on, right? Those basic elements. And then I think I'll answer questions on Wednesday, and that will be due the next midnight on Sunday. Prints on Monday if you want extra credit. So I think that'll get us through it. But I want to I want to talk about storefront, okay? And I did introduce it a little bit with the cabin, but I didn't get a whole lot into it. But storefront, does everybody know what storefront window glazing is? When I say that term, does that make sense? Somewhat? Okay. You all do know what it is. If you're shaking your head no, you do know what it is. Storefront is this kind of stuff, right? So you see it on every storefront all over the place. Here's a really great image of it, right? There's the perfect image. I was going to say, is that our AAB building? It looks like the brick. But it's basically, it's usually like an extruded aluminum frame, right? And they have glass in the extruded aluminum frame. It's typically it's used in commercial applications, right? And storefront, not to get too far into the explanation, but I have to tell you this because there's a storefront tool and a curtain wall tool in Revit for whatever reason, because they function very similarly in Revit. That's why I say that, not because they're not different in practice, right? But the way that storefront usually works is that it is non-structural, meaning it self-supports, it'll hold itself up, right? But it is inserted into an opening that supports itself. So it's not a structural element that like supports this brick opening, right? The brick opening could be there with or without the glass, and the glass is just inserted in there to create translucent areas, okay? So storefront is inserted into structural openings, okay? Curtain wall, which you've also seen, it's something, we'll get a good image of it. Something I would say, these are all good images, but I want to get one specific image. That's probably a pretty good image right there. Curtain wall is, and storefront is inserted into structural openings. Curtain wall is self-supporting and it's hung off the structure. Okay, so curtain wall hangs off the structure and usually spans multiple levels, right? So like this glazing goes from this level all the way up to there, and it's probably connected to the floor plates, right? So the floor plates of the building. So somewhere in some spot along here that you can't see, there's likely some steel that ties back to the steel frame of the building, right? And this glazing just hangs in front of those floor plates and self-supports. Okay. So I just wanted, that's really super simple, right? Let's see if we can, there's kind of a good detail, right? But that's how the two systems work. Now, so in practice, they're different, right? They're two different things. But in Revit, they function very similar. There's only the difference of mullions generating or not generating in Revit with them, which I'll show you in a second, okay? So I'm just going to maximize my screen with Revit here for a second and show you the storefront command here, right? Again, it's under the wall command. And if I go to architectural wall, and I use my properties drop down, I go all the way to the bottom here. We have curtain wall, exterior glazing, and storefront. Okay, so I'm going to click on curtain wall. I'm going to draw a piece of curtain wall. There's my curtain wall. Okay, click on wall, storefront. I'm just going to worry about those two for now. there's my storefront. You see the difference between the two, right? One is generated with mullions and a frame, and the other is not, okay? Although I access the wall command to generate them, I'm going to define a base constraint and a top constraint for both of them, just like I would a wall, okay? And I can add mullions to a storefront system or to a curtain wall system if I want, okay? Yep.
So this might be jumping ahead, but
Okay.
I was asking this question a couple weeks back. But
Yep.
So if you did this and then attached top to base, is that what's going to make the storefront follow the line of the roof?
Yes, yes, exactly, yep. Or you could edit the profile and draw a custom.
I'm sorry, what's that?
You could edit the profile of it
Oh, okay.
and draw a custom shape, yes. All right, so those are our two differences, right? We have storefront, we have curtain wall. I think my preference is, you know, we're gonna just in general use the term storefront. We're just gonna say storefront and we're gonna use the storefront tool, all right? And for our purposes right now, I think that works because the things that we're gonna be drawing here in the wireless switch, they have mullions, right? They have doors in them, they have mullions, and so we're just gonna create the storefront. And I'm gonna use the term storefront, okay? We could use curtain wall and we could add mullions to it, but I think for just the ease of use right now, we're just gonna use our storefront. So you saw me draw this in 3D, right? You may or may not have done this before, but you know, you can also create walls in 3D, right? I can draw walls in 3D. So I just did this to illustrate what storefront can do, okay? Storefront is a wall, but it's a translucent wall. So that's how the command works. And you're thinking, well, how do I get this into there to create a window, right? The way that storefront functions is that it has the ability to embed itself into a solid wall and create an opening. That's how it works. So as unintuitive as it may seem, when I create my storefront, I go to, for example, my floor plan. There's my storefront right there. Oh, that's what it looks like in floor plan view, right? When I want to create some storefront, and I will here, let me just zoom in here real quick. There's a little piece of storefront right there. And there's two pieces of storefront here. So this is a storefront piece, and so is that one, okay? So when I create my storefront, let me first show you how to define it, and then I'm gonna show you how to embed it into a wall, okay? So it functions just like a wall. So to initiate the command, right, I go to wall, architectural, I browse all the way down here to storefront, click, it's great, I've initiated the command. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna define the base constraint and the top constraint. So if I wanted my glazing to go from the lower level, up to upper level, I would do that, okay? The way that you are gonna worry about constraining your storefront, like these little openings that we have here, there's one there. There's only one window. I know in the upper level there's more, but oh, that's it. Huh. That seems very terrible. I guess I never really noticed that. But the way that we're going to define our windows, this is number 1, right? It has a little window tag next to it, number 1. And I'm going to go to where the windows are elevated. Let's see. Where are they? Did I miss them? Let's see. Here we go. No? I know their sheets aren't numbered like what I'm used to, so did anybody see them? Did I pass? Oh. Ah, there we go. Okay. So window 1. This window is 6'8" long, and it is 3'8" above the main level, and it has a height of 5'8". Okay. So these, in general, these drawings will tell you how big these things are. So maybe we will just bump into here. Okay. I will define our window like that, but first I just want to show you how to embed the window into the wall. Okay, so it functions just like a wall. You initiate the wall command, you choose storefront as your wall, you give it a top constraint and a bottom constraint, and then to insert it into the wall, you hover over the top of the wall, you pick the center point, the center line, you see how it highlights, click, move in the direction you want to go, click again, and it embeds itself into that wall, right? So a common mistake that happens here when students are first learning this is they think, oh, I have to leave a gap in the wall in order for that storefront to live, and that's not the case, right? And it's not the case because if I left a gap in this wall, all of this up here would disappear, right? There wouldn't be any wall right there. And we need that, obviously, it's a building. And so we leave the wall in place and we embed the storefront into it, and that's how it functions. Okay, it's as simple as that. So if I go back into my floor plan view, wall, storefront, click, click, I bump into 3D, there's my storefront. Okay, now if I wanted to, I want to stay in 3D, upper level, no, I've got a lot of stuff open. Lower level, there we go. Window tile. Now here's my my building here. If I wanted to create that little opening, right, the window that's going right here, right, it's going to go right, is it right there? 3'8", 5'8". Try and remember that. Yeah, right there. I want to create this little window right here, and I'm just going to kind of right now guess as to its placement. I'm going to initiate the wall command, storefront. It's going to be base constrained at floor plan level 1, the lower level, but it's going to have a 3'8" base offset, right? And instead of going up to the upper level, we're going to unconnect it and say that it is 5'8" tall. Does that make sense why I did that to everybody? I'll let you think about it for a second, maybe. No?
So why are you just going up 5'8"? Does that just go from
The 3'8" and the windows.
from 3'8"?
Yes. Right. Yep. Yep, exactly. So the window is 3'8" off the main level, and the unconnected height is 5'8". Yeah. So that's why I'm doing that. So now I come over here, and hopefully it stayed, and it was how tall? 6'8". There we go. And I'm just guessing. I'm not quite sure where it starts. You can figure it out with the dimensions, but 6'8". Enter, and there's my little window. Okay. Looks wonderful. We'll pop into 3D. Oh, there it is. And there's my little window.
So how do you add a door into it?
Ah, that's a good question, right? It's so simple. Let me show you that next. Let me show you the magic that is Revit next, right? So I don't really want this wall. Let me just tell you, let me just say the trickiest part about storefront is actually its selection. It's very difficult to select certain elements of storefront. That's the hardest part about it, but to draw it, to add doors, to define its heights, right? Very easy. I'll show you how to do the door in a second. Let me show you how to select something and then delete it, and then I'll add the doors to the vestibule. So if I hover over a piece of storefront and I get this selection set, right? If I click, the entire piece of storefront will be selected. And that will leave the wall alone that it's embedded itself into, but it will select the storefront piece. I can hit delete and it goes away. Great. I'm gonna hit undo. If I go to my storefront and that happens, right? Click. Only that mullion piece is selected, right? And it's pinned. This is the biggest pain in the neck. It's pinned. So even if I did want to delete it, I'd have to unpin it first and then hit delete. But that's not the only other piece of storefront we have in our system. If I hover over my storefront and I click now, there's another piece, right? So all of these sections of mullion, they're all separate. Wonderful, right? which is actually very nice when you get into Revit and you want to customize it. Storefront is so, it's so easily changed and customized that you can do so much with it. It's wonderful, actually. But it's the biggest pain in the neck ever at the same time. But I can unpin that and I can hit delete. Okay. I also have tab. If I click on that, it selects a grid. Let me talk about that in a second. Tab, click. I have a panel. I uncheck that, or I unpin it and I delete it, and I can delete. Oop, nope, I can't delete the glass. It's opening, it's keeping the opening. So I have horizontal mullions, I have vertical mullions, I have a panel, and then I have the entire system. Okay. But not only do I have all of those elements, I also have kind of this invisible, you see when I hover my mouse, do you see that? I also have this invisible system that behind all of that defines where the mullions go. Okay, so the mullions, let me show you something in the wall type of a piece of storefront. I can create new ones just like a wall, edit type, duplicate, rename, right, redefine. The system here, I have it set out so that the maximum spacing of mullions, the vertical grid, is 5 feet. And the horizontal, the maximum distance is 8 feet. So these mullions are placed at every 5 feet, or a lesser distance. And the vertical will never exceed 8 feet tall, right? So that's how our mullions are being defined. You can see here that the mullion type, the rectangular type, is being defined right here. So I can choose different sizes of mullions if I wanted. Okay. But behind all of this, the spacing 5 foot in width, the 8 foot tall, right? Behind all of that is what's called a mullion grid, or a curtain grid. Okay. And that invisible sort of grid that you don't see actually on this storefront. Let me see if I can show you it. There it is right there. That grid, see how if I hover, I can select it, click, is where those mullions lie. So we have the panel, we have the vertical, horizontal mullions, we have the entire wall system itself, and then we have the storefront grid that occurs behind there that sort of marks a place where mullions are set. Okay, so that storefront, or the curtain grid, if I wanted to place another mullion there after I deleted it, I could come up to, I have some tools here, mullion. I could select that grid and replace a mullion, right? That allows a marker to be placed so that I can put mullions. Checks out enough. Okay. I'll talk about those again on is today Wednesday? We'll talk about them again on Monday. All right, I'm going to delete that storefront system there, but I'm going to leave this one here, okay? So that's how the whole system works. It's a wall system. It embeds itself into the wall, right? You can constrain its base. You can constrain its height, all those good things. So how do we then, we have, I'll just do one more thing tonight. I'll place the doors here and here, and we'll put a door in our storefront, all right, which is super easy. Go back here. All right, so now I want to place a storefront here and I'll place a storefront right there. And I know, and if you don't have that inherent sort of knowing about it, I guess, that feeling about it, whatever, I can just place a piece of storefront here. And I'm going to guess that this door and this storefront piece is 8 feet tall. I'm just going to guess that for now. But I'm going to come over here to wall, architectural, storefront, and I'm going to say, I don't want a base offset. I want that to be 0, enter. But I want the top constraint to be unconnected, and I want this to be 8 foot tall. So you'll actually use this unconnected system a lot with storefront, because a lot of times storefront doesn't span like from exactly level 1 to level 2, right? It's slightly shorter, or there's a specific height associated with it. And I'm just going to draw a little piece of storefront here. Oh, did I grab curtain wall? No, I have storefront. Oh, I didn't go 5 feet, so I didn't get a mullion. That's why. There we go. But this goes all the way to the edge. I'm not going to worry too much about that, but this goes all the way to the edge, right? So I'm going to use a line, AL to my wall. Click. I'm going to hover over here. See how it's a little hard to see, but it allowed me to align the edge of my storefront wall to that wall. AL. Click. It's hard to see. Click. Okay. All right, so what's happening here now? Let me show you one other thing. This is a little bit of a tricky item because it takes actually quite a few that's odd that it allowed that one to turn there. It's weird, huh? No. I'll leave that alone for now. You know, I have this mullion that's been generated right in the center of that space, DI dimension, and it's, you guys will probably have to watch the video again when you do this, but tab, I'm going to dimension the inside of this vestibule. So half of 5'9", right, that's a little under 3 feet. So right here, my door, which is right there, is probably going to be at least 3 feet wide, which means that currently this space is not wide enough to host a door. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to host a door into this storefront, and what that requires is that we change the panel. All right. So just watch what I do. I'm going to talk through it. Just follow the madness. I'm going to go to the door, the curtain wall door that needs to go in there doesn't exist in our model. I needed to load it in. So I'm going to go to Insert, Load Family, and I'm going to go up to, I believe, Door. I think it's in Doors. Curtain wall double door. Nope. Yeah, that looks pretty good, right? There's my curtain wall door. Curtain wall single glass open. So what I just did is I loaded the type of door I want in there. And the way that you insert a door into a piece of curtain wall is you change out the panel. So essentially what I'm going to do, here's my little vestibule. I'm going to grab this panel right here of glass, and I'm going to switch it to a door type. Okay. So when I come in here, I can tab. See, again, it's hard to select things in storefront. Tab, oop, there's my panel. Click, highlighted. I'm going to unpin it. And then over here under properties, you see we have a panel available. I'm going to drop down, and my curtain wall door appears right there. If you've loaded it in, it will be there. With my panel selected, I click on the door. You don't see it in 3D view, but you see it in elevation view, and you see it happening here. You see that? It changed to a door. I can use my grips to alter the flip of it, right? But there's my door. Okay. So now the question is, how do I make sure that door is the right size? Because storefront doors are so easily editable and so easily inserted that they just insert themselves into an opening and they don't really care the width of that opening, if that makes sense. So I'm going to measure my door, DI dimension, tab, 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 trying to hit this inner, there we go, click, click, 2 foot 6 3/4, not wide enough, right? Which means I have to somehow move this curtain wall mullion, click, that's pinned, unpinned. I'm going to nudge it with my arrow key. Or, see my temporary dimension highlighted? 3 foot. Oh, geez.
So did you select the mullion or that mullion hatch mark?
The grid,
Oh, the grid, okay.
I selected, so in my first selection, I grabbed the mullion. And I suspect it won't let me change it. Okay, why won't it let me change it? The grid here, let's try that. There we go. Yep, we do have to move our grid. That's not always the case though. That's not always the case. Sometimes it will. I'm thinking there's a constraint up against this wall. You usually can move the mullion. But that was a good, you recognize that at least. That's good, right? So then we grab the grid but it's not 3 foot, right, to the inside. So we'll say 3'2", whoops, 3'4", and that's good enough. So now when I look, that's my south elevation. You don't see it in 3D, but now I've got a door, right, with a swing on it. Looks great. My vestibule is very much blending into the background, of course. But if I go into 3D, I do see the storefront at least. I'm going to click on this and get rid of it because it's not supposed to be there. All right, so now I have one more piece of storefront to add, and that's going to be the one right behind it. But instead of creating storefront and going through that whole ordeal of putting the door in it, what do you think would be easier to do? Copy it, right? So I'm going to click on this storefront, the whole system, the whole wall system, which means I have to grab that selection, click. I'm going to copy it, CO, click, and copy it to the center line of that wall back there, click. Ooh, for whatever tricky reason, it created a new mullion. Tab, tab, tab. I'm just going to tab, click, delete, click, delete. Ooh, that's not the same size though. Why did it do that? It was weird. AL align. AL align. Tab, tab. Oh, come on, tab. This is a perfect illustration of what a pain in the neck storefront is, right? 3'4". There we go. Oh, it's pinned. That's why. There we go. Okay. It's the best thing and the worst thing in the world in Revit. So now I have my two. I still feel like it looks smaller. Do you guys feel like it looks smaller? RP reference plane. It's not, I guess. It still felt like it looks smaller though. Huh. Okay. Control S save, right? So we have our building shell. We have all of kind of the hard things done, right? We have the levels defined. We have the grid system set up. That's dimensioned. We have the exterior wall system created. We've added some storefront to those exterior walls, right? And I think next time we meet, I'll do, I'll create the interior walls. And if we have time, I'll get going on the stair. Let's see, is there anything on the second level that's tricky? You're not going to worry about doing the back stair if you want to. It's extra credit, so I'm not going to go through that. But just really kind of figuring out these interior dimensions. I just want to go through that a little bit. Any questions on any of this? All right, we'll just look at it. Our lovely little, you can go, you know, our lovely little square building. Oh, the roof, we'll put the roof on. And I guess we will continue Monday.